This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Welcome back to the Keeping Karlsson Short Shifts podcast. I'm Ben Burnett. Joining me as always, my pal and yours, Louis Ezekiel. Louis, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. It's been an interesting Thursday evening. Not our usual big slate of games, but some interesting plot lines to follow. I see that the Boston Bruins have finally scored at even strength, so that's always nice to see.
You know what? I was starting to look into futures on the over-under at a 0.5 even strength goals for Boston in 2021. I'm glad I didn't put any money on it.
Well, yeah, I think you could have bet the over pretty safely, but it was starting to be a very nerve-wracking experience waiting for that to happen.
I don't want to freak you out, Louis, but Boston just scored again. So they've scored 2 goals here within 2 minutes in the third. So first piece of news from Short Shift, the Bruins are allowed to score goals again.
Very exciting, especially since we're up against Carter Hart this week. So
we are. And so, Louis, I want to start tonight's show talking about a couple of players we spoke about at the end of last week's show. And specifically, I want to bring it up because you kind of have a conundrum involving Linus Ullmark, who missed 2 games now for personal reasons, and Tony DeAngelo, who, of course, was out for 2 games, healthy scratched. And now that he's back, he looks to be back in the Rangers lineup for Friday night, but was not on the top power play unit in practice. Louis, what is your Ullmark TDA conundrum?
Well, I really like Ullmark for the remainder of the week because he is up against the COVID caps. Not that they have COVID or anything, but they've been 4 players suspended by the league for 4 games apiece on that COVID list. So I like Ullmark this weekend against the Caps, and I need to bring him off of my IR. And I'm trying to decide whether I want to drop Oscar Lindblom or TDA, since I have Fox now, who appears to be at least holding on for now to that top power play position on the Rangers, which is obviously an outstanding position to have if you can get it.
So are you then walking back what we said on Tuesday? We both agreed we would give Tony DeAngelo another chance to reclaim that spot on the top unit. Are you now thinking that with the news that he's not going to start there on power play 1, that it's over for him?
So it all kind of depends on how much I need a streaming spot. Because really I could bring Ullmark back and drop Lindblom, who I just picked up and who has not been super productive right now. And I could still stream that TDA spot potentially. So right now I'm leaning towards bringing Ullmark back and dropping Lindblom to give TDA those couple games to see what happens. I would be, making a big mistake, I think, if I dropped him and then he turns out to, eventually make amends with Dave Quinn and move up to that top power play position. I think it's just too much of a risk for me right now. Lindblom is an interesting guy, but I think I could scoop him back up off of waivers for pretty cheap if I needed to later on in the week.
Well, but Lindblom started off the season a little bit hot. I do agree that he's probably more droppable than Tony DA. I have to admit, I was pretty bullish on TDA's chances of getting back on that top unit, getting another look there. But the news today definitely was a bit of cold water on those hopes. I'm very bullish on Adam Fox right now, and I think that Tony DeAngelo is droppable in most leagues. I don't think that you have to drop him though. So like if you're in a super competitive league where you know, if you drop him and he gets picked up and is back on the top power play unit by the end of the weekend, then you're like totally screwed. I would probably stop short of dropping him in a league like that. I'd give it another couple of days before making a move that could be that consequential. But in most leagues, I think that Tony DeAngelo is probably like your third or fourth defenseman. And if you desperately need a win this week and you're going to stream him out, and then, somebody like I mentioned him the other night, Rasmus Anderson is available. First of all, I would at this point, no question, it's Rasmus Anderson over Tony DeAngelo. But at this point, it's also probably Keith Yandel over Tony DeAngelo. You know what I mean? Like the waiver wire options are starting to look more appealing in relation to Tony DeAngelo.
Yeah, I'm in the league where I have him. The defensemen are not super plentiful, and I'm actually maybe ready to not have to worry about carrying a defenseman in that slot. He is an extra D. But I think, like you said, I feel too cautious right now. I think it's too much of a danger that I could really blow up in my face. I'm going to give him those couple games and see where he moves around in the lineup and see, how much of an in the doghouse kind of guy he's going to be before I'm going to make any drastic changes.
And I think that this conversation is pretty telling about just general early season fantasy conversations, which is just like, try not to panic as best as you can, because we are getting so much information, and each game has such a massive effect on each perception of each player, right? Because one game right now is 25% of the sample that we have on these guys. So it's real easy. People were talking about dropping Matt Barzal last night, and now he has 3 points today. So I definitely understand being patient in deeper leagues, but in shallower leagues, like there's probably somebody who is worth more now and worth about even long term as Tony DeAngelo on a lot of waiver wires.
Yeah, if I was holding him in my buddy keeper, he would be on the waiver wire right now. But I've got him in the cupful, so I'm going to try and hold on to him here. I have Fox there too, so however it turns out, I'm going to be happy. I just would like to be resolved sooner rather than later.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned the Capitals and what a tasty matchup that looks like for Ullmark, assuming he gets it the start against the Russian Free Capitals. Any players that you like? Any fantasy stock that you're a little bit more hype on, given the news?
I mean, we're going to see Verana, Backstrom, Wilson as that top line, most likely, and I imagine they will get a ton of minutes. Maybe that'll be nice for Wilson because he can put up some more peripherals for you. That's usually why you have him in your lineup. But I think overall we're looking at a situation where it's going to be subtraction overall. You've lost your top goalie, although Samsonov has not been outstanding so far to start the season. Samsonov, I should say. But yeah, with Ovi out, with some of these other pieces, I think it does become very concerning. Maybe we see Craig Anderson in goal for the Caps for one of these games. It just seems like a bad situation overall. I don't look at it as being particularly beneficial for anyone.
I'm with you there. Losing exposure to Ovechkin isn't a great thing for Tom Wilson. We love him because he has that Ovechkin exposure. But yeah, I think that getting minutes for Verana and Wilson, they're very interesting in that spot because they're going to be the guys. And Verana in particular, I think, has a really nice opportunity here. Over in Colorado, it looks like they are going to get Team Canada standout Bowen Byram in on the defensive unit in tonight's game, his first NHL action. Do the Avs really need another solid defenseman or solid super future stud player though, Lewis? Can't they just share?
When your cup runneth over, drink deep. That's my thinking on this. So I think it's great for them to have this. And in terms of how it might, change stock for Avs D-men, I spent part of the summer when there was nothing better to do, fretting in the patron-only Discord group about whether I made a mistake keeping Makar over the summer over some other players. I think that he may be a long-term threat to Makar's power play 1 slot, but I wouldn't be too optimistic in the short term here in terms of getting really excited to put him in your lineup during this season. Obviously we're making guesses here. I would love to see his minutes and his deployment during this evening's games before I really answer. But we might hear about the other BB besides, the incomparable Ben Burnett on the big show this weekend if he stands out in this game, a couple games for Colorado here.
Yeah, I think it's more of a thing of we'll judge based on the hype that comes out from the first couple games, but too early to get too hype unless you are in, of course, some deeper dynasty leagues, or he's probably owned in a shallow dynasty league as well. But you get my meaning here.
The economy is made up of real people doing real stuff, and it affects everything, which you obviously know since you're a real person doing real stuff. Marketplace is here to help you get smart about everything beyond the what of the day's business and economic news. We dig into the how and the why with the real people driving our economy. From big tech and interest rates to small businesses and what's happening at the Fed, Marketplace breaks it all down so you don't have to. Listen to Marketplace wherever you get your podcasts.
Over in Toronto, the injury to Joe Thornton, if you had told me, Lewis, 3 weeks ago, an injury to Joe Thornton would have fantasy relevance, I would suggest that you were wrong. But instead, he's been playing on that top line with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner all year. In his stead, after he was injured, Zach Hyman popped up to that top line in the last game. In practice today, though, in the first line, Austin Matthews was flanked by VC and Marner, who VC had been playing with Nylander and Tavares. And then on the second line, Nylander, Tavares, and Zach Hyman. Any interest in either VC or Hyman in their new roles?
I mean, that kind of exposure is really nice. I guess I would lean towards Hyman because it looks like Hyman's getting time on that second power play. It is not, at least so far, it has not been the same sort of balanced power play attack that we've seen in the past with Toronto, which I think most Toronto fans are very happy about, or people holding, the high-end Toronto players. But yeah, I mean, he's only spent 3 minutes with Tavares and Nylander so far this season. It's got to be an upgrade over his most common lineups in Mikheyev and Kerfoot. This gives the former Wolverine a chance to pace for his usual 55 to 60 points over an 82-game season. So if that's rosterable in your league with about 37% power play share on that second power play, grab him. This does seem like a change that is more likely to stick than some of these injury-related changes, just given Thornton's age and durability. I don't know that he's guaranteed to come back to that top spot when he returns from injury.
And so I want to talk about a couple of slumping players here, and we're going to start in Vancouver, actually, talking about Elias Pettersson. 5 games now into the season, 1 assist so far. I thought at first, JT Miller is out. Maybe that's why he just doesn't have his mojo back yet. But now that JT Miller has been back for a few games, he's racking up the points. 3 assists last night. Brock Besser got in, scored a couple of goals. Are you worried about Elias Pettersson? 5 games in, only 1 assist.
No, yeah, I think it is worrisome. I'm worried, but I'm not panicking, I suppose. The fact that he only has 13 shots in 5 games is not great. I don't like to see that. The other guy we're going to talk about is shooting a bit more. It just hasn't been very successful. But Pettersson's got such a great supporting cast around him. That top power play is so good. So, Pettersson is a little concerning. I'm worried, but I'm not panicking on this one. He's only been on the ice for 3 even strength goals, and he's only got in on 1 of them. That seems to me like it is an IPP issue that could right itself with a larger sample size. The 13 shots over 5 games is a little more worrisome, but Pettersson has such a great supporting cast. I think I prefer him to the other person that we're going to talk about here in just a minute, because I think there's a better chance for him to, just have some lucky bounces go his way and start to get in on more of these goals with the really skilled players around him.
Well, you say that you're worried about the shots, but 13 and 5 is actually an upgrade on his previous shot paces. So Pettersson is shooting more, but he's still not finding a way to get in on any goals. It does seem like in Vancouver, they're a little bit worried. I've been reading some media reports, and I mean, the fans have been way too harsh on him. What I don't really understand about NHL markets is how if a player slumps a little bit, it's not a discussion of like, I wonder what's going on with them. Instead, it's this player is ruining our lives. This guy is your franchise, but I just don't understand why your impulse would be to go crazy on them rather than to try and figure out what is at bet. Anyway, this is my soapbox. It's not fantasy helpful. It's just my complaint about the media. I think
sometimes you have to consider how would you feel if your job performance was graded on the same scale. Obviously you're not making as much, so that maybe plays a role here, but Yeah, I think if we were getting nitpicked for our every error, it might be very, very difficult and painful for us. I guess when I'm looking at the shots, I'm doing it in comparison to the next person that we want to look at, who is Kevin Fiala in Minnesota, who's got nothing to show for his 19 shots so far in one fewer game played. So those shot totals look quite nice. How are you feeling about Fiala right now?
Yeah, the shot totals are crazy. I mean, he looks like when you look at the stat sheet, you're wondering what's going on. After the absolute tear he went on, like the 2-point per game pace he was on for like 30 games last year, and the shot rates are exactly where you want them to be. So that's wonderful about Kevin Fiala. But I do think that there's a reasonable concern that not having Eric Stahl around is a huge disaster in Minnesota, right? Like, I was listening to the PDO cast the other day with Michael Russo, and they were talking about a goal where Kaprizov goes into the corner, makes a great play, gets it over to Parisi, and Parisi hits Victor Rask wide open net, and he can't score. And that's kind of the concern. Is it's like, who are you passing to? Who are you playing with? And the answer for Kevin Fiala is nobody's, unfortunately, and it's a little freaky.
Yeah. So when we talk, I mentioned before that I would rather have Pettersson, the next guy we're going to talk about, and it's because of that supporting cast, right? He's tied with Gallagher for third among NHL shooters, behind only Matthews and Connor McDavid, with one fewer game than each of them, same number of games as Gallagher. But I think we are a little more worried about his ability to convert on some of these shots just because of the lack of center depth. Minnesota seems like Spirit Airlines to me. You've got a couple solid wings, and then they've hollowed out everything down the middle, to save a buck. So I'm a little worried about things in that regard for Fiala in a way that I'm not concerned for Pettersson.
I'm not overly concerned about either, but you know what? I'm a little bit worried about Kevin Fiala not bouncing back to like 75 points, like a point per game guy. I think it's going to be tough for him to hit that mark that you are kind of the upside that you might have been hoping for when you drafted him. But at the same time, you got him at enough of a discount that you're probably okay having him come in around 65, 70 points and not having it be too big of a downfall for your draft.
Yeah, and I think in the meantime, you could consider him as a potential buy low option, I think, more than Pettersson, just because of the weight that the name carries. Unless, again, you're too nervous about the surrounding, the supporting cast there.
Yeah, with Pettersson, for me, it really is just I'm more worried about Pettersson as far as like his play, because he doesn't quite look the same as he has. He doesn't have that same sort of game-breaking burst. I haven't seen him look like an alien on the ice yet this season, and that is odd for Elias Pettersson, but I don't know. I've seen it with him for 3 years, so it's easy for me to be like, yeah, he'll be fine. But Kevin Fiala, really just the 35 games last year that he took off. So that's why I'm more concerned there, even though the shots are nice and he is filling that category for you if you're playing in a Cats league. Two more slumpers, Lewis, and they're both in Columbus. Seth Jones and Zach Werenski, 0 points so far in 4 games. I don't believe they have a point tonight against Tampa Bay. That game is tied 2-2 right now. No points either way. Are you starting to freak out? Are you starting to worry about Seth Jones and Zach Werenski?
Yeah, no, I think it is worrisome. I'm glad to see that they are starting to perk up a little bit and get some offense in Columbus, but it just seems like the way things are going with how they're balancing out the lines and PLD just being buried and Bjorkstrand not necessarily getting as much support as he would like, although he's converting a little bit here. Things are so topsy-turvy in Columbus. I would much prefer to see some lines settle out here so that they can maybe hit their rhythm a little bit, but I don't know that is going to happen until PLD potentially gets dealt. So yeah, I am a little bit worried about these two defensemen. I think it's going to be hard for them in a shortened season to be able to, approach that, even kind of a 40-point pace here. Might be starting to get out of reach if they go too many more games without putting some points on the board. Obviously Jones gives you some peripherals, which is nice, and you expect Werenski at least to shoot, but if they're not putting up points, this becomes quite worrisome for our two Columbus D-men here. I would still take Jones over Werenski, I think, in terms of bounce back ability. But yeah, it's getting late early for these two, especially when we consider that in a shortened season, each game is about 4% of your season.
I definitely am not I feel split. This is the reason why you don't invest in a Columbus defenseman, right? Is because each of them are kind of the number one guy. The lines never really stick. It's always fluid. Even if the lines did stick, I feel like there's no game breaker yet. Like, you hope that Bjorkstrand takes that next step, and he's looked really good, point per game so far this season, and that's a huge win if he can keep that up. But then you're losing Pierre-Luc Dubois. It looks like, he's barely played tonight, stapled to the bench. So I think there are concerning signs. Like, we're probably not getting the best versions of Zach Werenski and Seth Jones that we had hoped we might when we were drafting. But overall, I do still think, like 45 to 50 point pace rest of season seems reasonable, and Seth Jones is going to stuff the score sheet for you. I have a really interesting question here for you, Lewis. Somebody gave me a trade question. They said that they got offered Adam Fox for Morgan Riley, and then they also got offered somebody for Seth Jones. I can't even remember who the other one was. And I said, I would actually consider offering Seth Jones for Adam Fox. Is that too hot for you, or is that something that you would smash accept on?
Well, again, I'm in that position where I've got both of, thinking selfishly, I'm in the position where I've got both those Rangers defensemen, and I think I would want to keep it that way. I don't know that I would take Jones for Fox, because if Fox can hold on to that power play one position, and he's got a couple power play assists in the last game, like, he seems comfortable, he seems like he's making good plays. I feel like in Columbus, if you have two power play quarterback defenseman, you have no power play quarterback defenseman. So I don't like it. I think I would say no to Jones for Fox.
I want the Adam Fox side. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think I would too. And that is, it seems like a huge change since before the season, but that's definitely where I'm at. Adam Fox, the ceiling is sky high, whereas Seth Jones, you have a very solid floor, but I don't see the Adam Fox floor as too low. Even if Tony DeAngelo gets back in that spot and runs away with it, I think that Adam Fox is probably just a step or two behind Seth Jones. And I think that would have been considered an extremely hot take a few weeks ago. Overall, though, what are you really going to do with Seth Jones and Zach Werenski? You're not going to drop them. I guess you could maybe consider a trade, but yeah, overall, I think you're kind of stuck with them to ride it out here and see where they stabilize. If you can get a top 15 or top 10 defenseman for either one of them, or if you can package them with a forward to get a nice upgrade at defense, like I guess I could see that from somebody who's not so afraid. But I'm definitely starting to get a little bit. Just read the tea leaves here in Columbus. Like, it looks like it could be a total disaster of a season.
Yeah, I think that latter idea is maybe the way to go, to look into trying to package one of them with a more successful forward and see if you can't get somebody a little more reliable on defense. I'm with you. I hate to say it just a few games into the season, but just the way that things have been so tumultuous in Columbus, I worry that it is not going to be the kind of season that we expected from them, and that they may fall short of our expectations for the season.
One guy who I have really liked in Columbus, and I'm seeing him, he's like the guy that looks really interesting on the waiver wire to me in a bunch of leagues, is Alexandre Texier, playing with Bjorkstrand and Liam Foudy tonight. I do have some interest in Alexandre Texier in leagues that, especially I'm starting to see it in 12 and 14 team leagues. He looks very appealing with all those points so far. Nothing tonight, unfortunately, but hopefully he keeps that up, and I think that he is worth a look off the waiver wire.
Yeah, put him on your watch list. See what happens with him moving forward. Certainly, especially if he gets a chance to move up the lineup as some of these pieces move around, or maybe even move out of town.
One more player I just want to mention real quickly here, Lewis. We've talked about Drake Batherson in Ottawa playing with Brady Tkachuk at even strength and on the power play. Also, Josh Norris in that exact same spot, looking pretty good so far this season. Started the season with 3 points in his first 3 games, playing 16 and a half minutes or so a night. No points tonight against Winnipeg in a tough matchup with Connor Hellebuck shutting the door. So far, 4-1, I guess, not a shutout. But yeah, Josh Norris, is he somebody that you would be adding in any of your leagues, Lewis?
He seems like another one of those players in Ottawa who looks primed to get every chance in the world. I don't know why they wouldn't continue to give him run on that top line and that top power play as long as he is continuing to find success. I love the number of opportunities I've gotten to talk about former Wolverines here today. So nice to mention Josh Norris here. I think he is definitely of interest. If Drake Batherson was a player of interest to you, I think that Josh Norris should be as well. At least a guy to watch to see if he keeps getting, this prime deployment. I think about, not with Brady Tkachuk's pedigree or anything like that, but Brady was so interesting last year because he just was getting every opportunity in the world, right? So I love to see that. If he's going to play those big minutes, he's obviously going to have tons of opportunities to put the puck in the net. And the Senators have been surprisingly decent at it. Obviously, tonight was a setback, but, I think they're probably doing a little better than a lot of people expected.
Yeah, I think, he's not quite getting the Brady Tkachuk treatment but to see him on the top power play unit, I just think he's one of those guys where, my interest has peaked. If you've missed out on Drake Batherson, for example, then I think that Josh Norris might be an okay consolation prize to get you a little bit of exposure to Brady Tkachuk and Thomas Chabot and Evgeny Dodonov also playing on that top unit, but not somebody that I'm looking for in every league, but somebody who, if he fits the schedule and his schedule next week looks pretty good as well, I'm more than happy to stream in Josh Norris right now.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I like that as a pick.
All right, Lewis, that's enough from us. I want to thank everybody for listening, and I want to thank you for hanging out with me. Why don't you sign us off?
Oh, it is always a pleasure. Love to be here. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Appreciate all your listens. Please follow us at Short Shifts KK on Twitter. We'd love to answer your questions. We've been really enjoying all the hockey chatter in the young season. Thanks to Elon and Brian on the main podcast. Thank you to Pat Roach with the music. Thank you to Frozen Tools for helping us with all of our research. And until we see you next week, play smart and keep your shifts short.